thank you guys for coming out this evening, and thank you for your patience as we were kind of getting everything set up, waiting for our authors who had traffic getting here, which is no fun. So we are so grateful that you braved LA to come out to LMU tonight. My name is Jamie Hazlett, and I'm the outreach librarian here at Hannon Library. We scheduled this before we realized that this was one of the night of the first presidential debate. So extra thank you for, I mean, it's a hard thing to miss and an important thing. So anybody who's interested, if you'd like to stay and watch a recording after the event to talk to our authors about it, Janice is a really big advocate for the election, and so we can find a way to stream it, and you guys can stay in here and finish snacks, drink coffee, and whatever you'd like to do. I want to extend a sincere thank you to our co-sponsors for the evening, so the Office of Black Student Services and Ethnic and Intercultural Services, LMU Greek Council, the African American Alumni Association, and the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta, Sigma Gamma Rho, and Sigma Lambda Gamma. And I am particularly grateful for the great work that Adrienne Chivers and Randall Myers, who are hiding in the back there, put into tonight's event. So thank you very, very much. So tonight's special guests both received their undergraduate degrees in communications from LMU, the experience of which laid the foundation for their thriving careers in journalism and public relations, and everything in between, I think. Yes. Janice Littlejohn is formerly a columnist for the Associated Press and BlackVoices.com, and she is a regular contributor to Emmy, the official magazine of the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, and multi-channel news. Her work has been featured in a vast array of publications, including the LA Times, USA Today, TV Guide Magazine, Essence, Day Spa, Heart and Soul, In Style, Vibe, and others. And Christelyn Karazin? Is it Karazin? Karazin. Christelyn Karazin, who just made her entrance, is a health, lifestyle, business, and education writer for publications including Women's Day, Better Homes and Gardens, Ebony and Jen.com, Pregnancy Magazine, Reuters News Service, and many more. And together, they are the co-authors of Swirling, How to Date, Mate, and Relate, Mixing Race, Culture, and Creed, the book that they are here to share with you tonight. So please join me in extending a warm welcome to
It's so cool to be here. It's so awesome. I've been hearing about this library forever. And of course, they build it when I leave. So you guys get all the good stuff. So congratulations. Appreciate it.
So I guess if you want to start to talk about why we wrote this
book. You know what? It really comes from, it started with my own experience. I was raised in a mixed area, but my parents were married for 45 years, and when it was time for me to marry and look for the one, I expected that my significant other was going to look like me or look like my dad, who's going to be black. And it didn't work out that way. I don't think that I mentally said to myself, I can only be with someone who looks like me, but all of my actions really geared towards that. And anybody of a different race who came along who liked me, I never took them seriously. I also thought, they're not going to take me seriously. I think it was a lot of suspicion that, okay, you're Persian. I heard about you guys. You don't take me seriously. Would you ever take me home? It was always a suspicion and a fear. And so it really came out of my experiences when I finally found my husband, who's white. His background is German, Irish, and Polish. So, so I'm like the only black person in the world with the last name Karazin. So, but I had a lot of dissonance about it because I'm like, you're great. You have good credit. You have a savings account. You've never been to jail. You don't have no babies. You open the door for me. You're just great, but you're not black. I mean, it was just, it was really hard for me to deal with. And so I remember going through the computer and looking through, like Googling interracial relationships or interracial dating. At that time, 1999, they really didn't have a lot. And so I felt like there was really nobody that I could talk to. The only person nearly that was close was a cousin of mine who dated a white guy for about 6 years, and she told me he was never going to marry me. She's like, I dated this Jewish guy. That guy comes from a good family. He's never going to marry you. And so she cried like a baby when she saw me walking down the aisles, and we got married on April 28, 2002. So she wasn't a good source. I know it was well-meaning. I know she was trying to protect me because she'd had a bad experience. That's all I had. And so with Janice, she was my inspiration to become a writer. When I saw her, we met here at Loyola. She was my mentor. And I'd always wanted to write, but I didn't think that I had the stamina to write a whole book. At the time, I was just writing little, magazine articles, and I felt like, if you guys know Janice, she's so uber organized. She's like the anti-me. I mean, I look at her, I get tired. I'm like, she's got her day planned out to a T. So I knew that if I had that accountability and that organization, and I was a publicist, so I was kind of like the butterfly, and she was the journalist. I was the flag, I guess. And so she really brought an element to Swirling that really helped, I think us working together helped us flesh out the ideas. She'd always, I'll let her tell you, but she never had an issue. Like when I told her, I said, black women don't, they feel some kind of way about like dating outside their race. She was like, really? I'm like, yes. Like, you never felt like guilty or anything? Oh no. And I was just like, wow, now you really put a different perspective, because I felt some kind of way. Like I had some kind of conflict about it, whereas Janice didn't. And so we separated the book sort of in 3 parts. And so Janice was the, we started out with, okay, why you should do it, why you should swirl, what is swirling? And actually Janice came up with the proper definition for swirling. It's a, what do you call it? It's a present part. I had never learned the parts of speech. Thank God. I just learned it naturally.
Well,
present participle. Yeah.
It's a delicious blending of cultures and races and faiths, just in the same way our book presents ice cream and the swirly cone. We couldn't get past that in terms of what we thought people should start doing amongst one another. And if you look at a chocolate and vanilla and strawberry Neapolitan swirly ice cream cone, it's delicious. It's fun. So that was the image that we kept coming up with, and I like food, so it was just a natural go-to for me. But one of the other reasons why we wrote, one of the reasons beyond Christelyn's experience as a journalist, one of the things that I wanted to find out was why we kept reading these statistics about 42% of white women, of black women never marry, 70% are still single. And so I wanted to have an understanding of why that was. And one of my favorite movies is My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And in it, the father, who is about to give his daughter away to this white man, she's a good Greek girl, and he's getting ready to hand her over to this white guy, and he says at their wedding, one of the things that I have been contemplating since my daughter was going to marry Ian Miller was that Miller comes from the root word apple. Was it apple? And portucalis comes from the Greek word orange. And so he said, it occurs to me, apple and orange, they're both different, but we're all fruits. And so that was the defining moment for me, or the defining idea for me as we started taking a look at swirling. And so we interviewed 500 couples, we interviewed anthropologists, we interviewed psychologists, we interviewed sociologists to get an understanding from my perspective as a journalist why we were having this problem, why African American women in particular were having this problem, but also why women of color were having this problem, why there was so much discussion of race when President Obama became president and a post-racial society However, we still were talking about this topic very divisively. And so swirling is, for us, a changing of the conversation, a way to now embrace ourselves and each other in a way that we have not yet done. And so I'm really encouraged and really happy that this audience is so diverse, because this represents where we're going and where our future is going. And we have to now have deeper understandings and deeper conversations about who we are and what we mean to each other. And dating is a great place to start that conversation. So I have all these notes here that I have pointed out. But Christelyn, can you talk a little? We did divide the book into two separate parts. My part really deals with all the statistical information, all the nuts and bolts and nitty-gritty on why dating is important, why dating out is important, and looking at the statistics on the rise of interracial and intercultural dating. It also, since I'm single and free and living the life, it is, I also take a look at dating issues, where to find an interracial, where to find a mate outside of your race or culture or your faith. And ironically, it's as easy as going from across town, from South LA to West LA. And the other thing that was important to me was just looking at the fears that Black women in particular have about, and the stereotypes that we have about others and how we feel about ourselves, how others feel about us. And in looking at that, television, which I cover or have been covering for 20 years, where the bastion of social change is supposed to occur, is a very divisive medium in the way we see ourselves, in the way we look at each other. If you take, for instance, Basketball Wives. Basketball Wives shows and presents women of color and African American women as troublemakers, trouble havers, trouble presenters, just trouble in spades. And these are the kinds of things that others look at. If you don't believe that people see you or identify you based on what they see on television, you're highly incorrect, because a lot of who we think we are and the images that we present of ourselves are based on what we see on television. And if you see interracial if you see African American women, we either have no lives, no love lives at all. If you see us in interracial relationships, they're very divisive. Sex and the City was a big one, where discussions between Samantha and Black women while she was dating a Black man was very confrontational. So when we look at interracial relationships on television, they're always seen as confrontational, or they're avoided altogether. So when we look at something like NBC's Parenthood, has anybody seen that show?
I love it last night.
Yeah, I got it on.
That was interesting last night.
Oh, shucks.
Okay, I won't tell you.
Don't tell me. But one of the things that's interesting in the presentation of Jasmine and Crosby is that these two people can't even load a dishwasher without having an argument. But yet there is no discussion of their culture, of their race, of the differences between how they're going to raise their biracial son. And so it is now a subject of avoidance. And so we either have no conversation about it at all, or it's confrontational. And one of the things, again, that we want to do with this book is to start having those conversations. It's important. It's important to have those discussions. It's important to talk about the Trayvon Martin case and other cases without getting, it's racist, you're racist. We need to start having conversations with each other where we can actually talk to each other and come to terms with who we are and what we mean to each other. So Christelyn, those were an overview of my chapters. Christelyn has the nitty-gritty, guess who's coming to dinner.
Well, before I start, I just have to say, because I'm having flashbacks of when I was here. I stayed at Doheny in my freshman year. And so I remember on Friday, Saturday night, I was like a steady, all I wanted to do was, I was a bookworm. And so I was just like, I'm here for my education, and that's it. I'm not really, but I would see the guys, I'd be like, oh, he's cute, and I see the girls. And Friday nights, there would be girls doing perms, doing each other's hair, doing each other's fingernails. The black girls would be in the house together instead of going out and partying and commingling with other people. And like the black guys, there was like 2 black guys and 10 black girls to every, I don't know, is it still like that?
Yes.
And so like the unicorns, and you're the special snowflakes. You know that. And so when I was here, it was just like so much to me. And if you just even look at this room, I mean, you have more women than men. And so that's why we came to this point. Like, why is it that black women seem to hold out so much for that, IBM, that ideal black man? But they will pass by the cute Asian guy who's going to be the engineer, the cute Hispanic guy, the cute, white guy, and we don't take that seriously. And if the guy seems to express some interest in it, it's like, oh, he's just being nice. He's not really interested in me. A lot of times, because of what Janice was saying, that the media does teach us how to treat each other and what to think about each other, we think as black women, okay, he can't possibly want me because he's not black. He's not marriage material because nobody can love me like a black man can love me. Nobody can understand the Trayvon Martin case like another black person. Or nobody can understand, one day when the race war comes and he calls me the N-word, what's going to happen then? I mean, that's in the book too. We talk about all these what ifs that don't actually have any base really in reality. I mean, the reality is that when you're in a relationship, it's about you and that person. But there's a lot of hurdles that you end up having to go through. Like with me and my husband, we've been married for over 10 years. If it was just us in a room, it wouldn't be an issue. If it was just the entire world didn't exist, it wouldn't be an issue. But the problem is that there are people outside in the world who have opinions about interracial relationships. I remember when I went to visit my husband for the very first time on his territory. He's from Westport, Connecticut. And this is like a really ritzy, blue blood, Yankee, New England town. And there's like 2 black people in the whole city. and one of them, takes the trash. So, I mean, there are not black people there. And so it was very awkward for me and for them. It wasn't that they were mean, but it was strange. I felt like I'm not on my turf. I felt like these people hold some sort of reservations. My mother-in-law never had a black friend. So here I am, coming in her house as a prospective daughter-in-law, and she's never even had a black friend. So it was uncomfortable. And so I had to make a choice. I remember crying in my husband's brother's childhood room because it was so awkward and I was such a bag of nerves. And I had to make a decision. And I thought to myself, no parents could create somebody this awesome and really be jerks. And so I decided at that moment to suck it up and say, these people don't know me. These people see what they think they know on television. My husband's father's a judge, so he put black folks away. So he didn't know a lot about black people, but they didn't know me. So I had to make the decision. Was I going to allow them to get to know me and understand that they came from a place of concern and ignorance? Or was I going to walk away and lose like the best guy that I'd ever met, who's going to be the father of my 4 kids? I decided to stay. But it's a choice that you have to make because it is awkward. And so that's why we did like the guest who's coming home to dinner moment, because a lot of times if it's just you, it's fine. But when other people involved, his parents, your parents, on the other end, we interviewed over 500 people, and there's black women who, you know, their father said, I really am uncomfortable with you being with a white man. I'd rather you be a baby mama. And I'm not kidding you. Said, I'd rather you, you know, not be married, you know, have a baby, than to be married to who's white. So there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of suspicion. And so we wrote the Guess Who's chapter so that you can navigate those issues together, because those can be deal breakers. Those can be pivotal moments in a relationship, because families may feel rejected. Oh, you're with this person, what's going to happen with the kids, et cetera, et cetera. It's a serious issue. So when things get serious, we wanted to make sure that, you know, you go in, you communicate with your partner. You don't go in and, you know, have them be ambushed. Like, for me, I felt like I was ambushed. He didn't prep me in any way. I didn't know what I was going to expect when I went in there. So I had all these. We talk about having a secret code, like, you know, pulling on the ear. Okay, it's time to go. Or don't talk about this or talk about that. So we wanted to make sure that we prepared people for when it gets serious, because it's not always going to be wonderful gravy because other people are involved. So, yeah, so that's sort of.
Well, the one thing that we want to make clear, and this is actually Christelyn's line, character over color is really important to consider when looking at interracial, intercultural, and interfaith dating. And dating and identity, we all have our ideas of who we're supposed to date, who we want to date, and it's a big deal. And it's a big deal when you go beyond that. Who we find attractive has a lot to do with who we're exposed to. And one of the things that we encourage women to do, and men as well, is to start exposing yourself and exploring other people. You don't know who you're going to like and who you're going to love until you get out there. I know of people who say, well, I'm only attracted to black men, or I'm only attracted to Latin men, or I'm only attracted to white men. And even in a swirling relationship, you should explore more than just a white man or a Latin man or a Persian man. You should explore. I mean, it goes back to food for me. All of it goes back to food. You don't eat just chocolate ice cream or just vanilla ice cream. That's boring. You eat all kinds of ice cream. You don't eat just potatoes and rice. You eat beans and all kinds of other wonderful flavors. So embracing what you...
Beans with ice cream, that sounds like a good dinner.
You know, but there is different. It's very sweet. No, it's actually Korean. And so exploring and exposing yourself to people of other cultures opens you up not only to that person, but it opens you up to other fashion. It opens you up to other political discussions. It opens you up to other things that can enrich your life in ways that you had never. I mean, I learned Farsi dating a Persian guy. I don't know any anymore because I haven't had to talk to anybody. But again, the more races and cultures you're exposed to, the more available men that are open to you. And the challenge is, because we still live in such segregated communities, if you go to my community in Baldwin Hills, it is predominantly black. If you go to Christelyn's community, it is predominantly white. You have to now,
White.
Huh?
Really white.
You have to now start challenging yourself to be brave, to live brave, to love brave, and get out of your comfort zone, to invite your girlfriends to go with you cross town, or go with you to this interesting thing that you saw in the paper, so that you can now embrace and embody a new spirit of not only yourself, but who is available to you and who will be attracted to you. So, I guess we can.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, because you're all college students here, and not to say that you'll find the one in college, but I want you all to not make the mistake that I made and just stick to the books, because I know a lot of us come from families that maybe we're the first or second generation to go to college, and they just say, don't get in a relationship, don't get pregnant, just get your, don't worry about a relationship, just get your education and get out. I understand the place that comes from, but I think that in order to be a whole person, it's good to be educated in intersex relationships. I mean, you really should, date, and it's not to say that you're going to find your husband, but just get out there. You may find the one. He might be in your study group. I was a couple people in my study group. I should have. So that's what I'm really hoping for you guys, and you guys too. But I'm just saying, for the girls that are in here, don't just lock yourselves up. Don't just hang out with your girlfriends. Explore. College is a place of exploration. Just don't get pregnant.
Well, on that note, it's really important to us. One of the things we've been traveling around the country. Christelyn just came back from Atlanta. I'm going to New Mexico. We're going to San Francisco. And one of the things that's important to us as we continue this journey is to hear what people think, not only about our books, but about what your concerns are. So I'd like to take this opportunity to open it up to questions.
Come on, don't give me crew. Yes.
My name is Cedric Watkins. Excuse my voice, I'm a little bit hoarse. I'm a black lawyer here in Los Angeles. It's for the First AME Church. I have a 23-year-old daughter in law school at Columbia. I've been divorced for about 12 years. Close. That's the preamble. In college, I played football at the University of Washington, and every brother on the team had a white girlfriend. Every brother on the basketball track team had a white girlfriend. Being from Long Beach, California, there's nothing in my eyes better, in my opinion, than dating a black woman. Now, of course, I get, Cedric, you must be married to a white girl because you're a lawyer.
And it's funny, you expect that.
I can't expect to be married to a sister because there are sisters who are very talented, very beautiful, and very spiritual. So my question is, that was my Iraq moment for you. My daughter's 23, 5'10", beautiful brown-skinned lady, and she says, Dad, I can't find any brothers at all in law school. I'll be graduating next year, and I'll come back to California from Columbia. Will you accept me having a white boyfriend? So I've really been, this swirling issue, I just became friends with Janice on Facebook. So that's what I'm doing. So I said, let me come to this tonight and miss my degree so I can see what's happening.
Wow, you are awesome.
I have some literature that I will share, and then we will try to get it streamed back up here after this is over.
So my mixed feelings are, she says, Dad, if I bring home a white guy to marry, how are you going to feel about this? Because you're always talking, Malcolm, you're always talking about as you get older, you're getting more Afrocentric. Will you have a problem with that? And that moment came up as you mentioned, well, if there's a race riot, and it's going down, and your man calls you the N-word, how should I react? And I told her, I will love whoever you bring home, Jade, but my preference would be for you to be with a woman of color. I mean, for a man of color. So I'm just wondering, from both sides of the spectrum, you're married to a gentleman who happens to be non-African American, and you're still single, but you've dated people of Farsi, of other colors. How have you dealt with that issue? And as an African American father, how should I deal with that if she does come home and say, Dad, I'm going to marry a white gentleman or a non-African American?
I know that.
Well, I do understand the position you as a father are in because, you look at, but you said yourself, let's go back to when you were in college, the black men on your football team and on the basketball team were all with non-black women. it's almost expected, isn't it, that if a black man reaches a certain level of success, that it's somehow expected that he's not going to be with a non-black woman, like it gives him a ticket somehow, because people will say to you that they were surprised that you were married to a black woman because you're a lawyer, and so they just automatically assume that you should be married interracially. The problem is that, if we could clone you, and if you could clone yourself, that would be great. But the bottom line is that there simply are not enough men who feel the way that you do in wanting to exclusively date and marry African American women of your caliber for every black woman. And what I would say is that it's important to have an open mind and an open heart.
And an open dialogue.
And an open dialogue. I would first talk to your daughter and tell, if I'm sure that she's not going to bring somebody to you to meet unless she's serious about it, right? I don't get the sense that she brings home somebody she's had 2 dates with to meet you.
She went to undergrad at UPenn, and so brothers who did come by would wind up not wanting to come to the front door. They wanted to text her and say, I'm out front. So I put a little bass in my voice and said, hey, you need to tell this Negro to come out properly meet me so I can look him in the eye to make sure that he's going to treat my daughter right. Again, my other daughter, who's 25, dates a Brazilian gentleman, and they're thinking about getting married. So it's a real dichotomy from my end to say that as a single black father who has 2 beautiful daughters, one says, Dad, will you have a problem if I bring home a white guy? And my other daughter says, Dad, do you have a problem with this Brazilian cat because he has a dark olive color? So, my preference, I will go on record and say, and this debate has come up at the Black Lawyers meeting, the Black MBA meeting. It's the president of the 100 Black Men in Los Angeles. This debate has come up a lot of interracial relationships. So I like David, my other daughter's boyfriend. He's a good guy. But I've always said, whoever it is, if you treat my daughter wrong, I will lose my bar license and I will do a number on you. So yeah, it's a real debate. My preference would be for my daughters to marry an African American male. But I am cognizant when I go to church at Fame, I am maybe 2% of the brothers who still go to church. When I go to, I'm on the board of trustees at Pepperdine, and I'm the only person of color. I know it's a predominantly Republican white school. So these are issues that your book, and I plan on buying one tonight and getting a signature, I really want to make sure I read it and then give it to my daughters so they can have a better understanding of this culture of, Dad, we can't find an educated black man who's not running games.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
It's important for me to understand why you prefer that your daughters marry a black man. One of the things that we did talk to a psychologist about was the fact that you're not any different than a white father or a Muslim father or a Catholic father or a Jewish father. The idea that we all want to stay within our same sect of people, regardless of race or culture or creed, is a human need. It avoids confrontation. When you're all the same, there's no, it's easy. And so I'm curious for you, if you can illuminate a little better, and maybe I can then comment on what it is you feel deep down is your issue with your daughters dating a non-black man who might be a nice guy.
That's a very valid question, Janice, and so since I just met you recently in the last couple of weeks, this is a great answer for me. That there's enough issues she's had to go through going through UPenn, now at Columbia Law School, where if a sister is with a gentleman of non-color, she's looked at by other sisters. They will look her up and down. I mean, she does the little litmus test constantly. If it's a brother and they see a beautiful sister, either one of you, with someone of non-color, I purposely, that's just something I do, I will stop and say, hello, Hey, how you guys doing? And really, 90% of the time, I don't get a response. I don't get a response at all. So it's enough for her being a 5'9", beautiful, educated black woman to find another African American male, but to add on top of that, I live in Ladera Heights, and where I live, it's a whole litmus, it's a whole potpourri of blacks and whites, etc. I like being around people who look like me. At University of Washington, Seattle, I was the spook who sat by the door. At Pepperdine, at Loyola Law School, I'm the spook who sat by the door. So I like that idea of if something does go down, people will come and say, Cedric, hey, good morning, how are you doing, how's your family? With my daughters, because as African American strong black women, and I mean like, my daughter wears a t-shirt that says, this is what a feminist looks like, and she's a Delta. And so I know that there's issues that they're going to go through in their life. My oldest daughter works at Disney. She's the spook who sat by the door. She's a producer and a writer. And so there was I think it was John Carter, there was a black person being hung by a rope that was on the set in Utah. And of course the director said, well, don't worry about it, Yasmin. You know, don't take this too personal. But if that had been a Jewish person with a swastika on his chest, on a rope, all HELL would have broke loose. So the same things maybe I dealt with at CBS 25 years ago, she's dealing with it now as a 25-year-old young woman. Right. So those are my concerns. She should marry anyone who she loves, and I will love that person just the way my daughter loves. But I know that she hasn't lived long enough yet to be able to deal mentally with the problems that may come up by being married to someone of non-color.
One of the things that we address in the book that is really important is that you have to find someone who may not be, he may not know your struggle. We talk a lot about the idea of the struggle. They may not know your struggle, but they have to understand it. They have to be open enough to understand, and not even in an empathy kind of way, but to be willing to see your side. They need to be willing to understand why when there was a psychologist that we interviewed who is quite a white man who is now married to a black woman, and he had to understand why when they walked down the street in Chicago holding hands that she would let go of his hand when they walked by a group of black people, because she didn't want to have that confrontation with a member of her group of people, although they did not know who she was. He had to now discuss that with her and have discussions with her. And so one of the things, communication, like we were saying earlier, dialogue is key. It's as important for her to have conversations with her mate, with her potential spouse, about how she feels about being stared at. It's important that you have a conversation, an open conversation, and non-confrontational discussion with her about how you feel about that, how you feel about having biracial children. And the thing is that if you open yourself up as a father to allow her to make these decisions, she could, I mean, I married a black man. I am now divorced from said black man. But it had nothing to do with the fact that he was black. It had to do with the fact that I didn't want children, and he thought I'd change my mind once we got married. It really didn't work for me like that. So I think the thing that is important is that she may she may marry someone that she may end up not having the kind of relationship she wanted to have. The thing is that she needs to have your support as a father to make the decision on her own, to feel comfortable bringing him to you and talking to you about him when things don't go particularly right.
We've actually had this conversation as an interjection, and I said I will love and support anyone who you marry. But if you ask me my preference, nobody's Archie Bunker. I'm not anti anything. I think I have the prettiest young black women in the world, who are my daughters, and my preference would be yes, that they would be that. Maybe I've been biased because I've been approached at the courthouse, etc., saying, well, O.J. Simpson only wants someone of non-color. Marcus Allen says, I'll never date a black woman. Ryan Gumbel, I'll never date a black woman. and I can go on a litmus test of a litany of names.
But love,
And-
you know what?
So
Love
we're just-
love does not look like what it's supposed to look like. I mean, it doesn't.
But
Christelyn
when
has
you
said
have,
that.
but here's the thing. We have to talk. We have to be real here. And I love what you're saying. And as a black man, I love that you're acknowledging the fact that there are some black men, especially who have achieved a certain level of success, who say, I don't want to. I'm going to date Kim Kardashian or somebody who looks like her. I don't want somebody who looks like my mother. I don't want somebody who looks like my sister. I want somebody who looks like anything but me. But we, as black women, are supposed to seek out black men who don't want us, then are not reciprocating that interest. We are socialized to want black men like you. But then black men like you want to be with Kim Kardashian. So what are we supposed to do? I mean, you understand how that's a very, that's a rock and a hard place for a black woman. You say you prefer, but you acknowledge that these men are saying they don't want black women. So
But
what are black women
they're
supposed
not
to
really
do?
representative, I believe, of African American men in today's society. When this discussion comes up at conferences about men and women, anytime that you're a successful black man, that means you must have either a white wife or a white girlfriend.
But it must be rooted in some sort
In
of...
some minds, I think it's that Willie Lynch syndrome sometimes that kicks into place that starts that. I want to make sure I stay focused on your book because
Sure.
I haven't read it, but I've really enjoyed the
We
excerpts.
should come to your conferences.
Right. And I also just want to say really quick that skin folk don't necessarily mean kinfolk. I mean, just because somebody shares the same color as you doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be able to share your experience, your particular unique experience as a black person. Growing up in Ladera Heights, your daughter is not going to have the same experience as somebody who grew up in Watts. And just because that person shares the same skin color does not mean that they're going to have the same outlook and philosophy about life. So if you think about skin color being the thing that unites all of us, it really does, it's a flimsy fabric, if you think about it, because we're all different. We come from different areas. And if that is the only thing that, unites us as skin color, then I think that's pretty superficial. But what I'm seeing right now is a loving father who is going to want the best for his daughters, and I'm not worried about them at all. The only advice I would say to you is that please don't say in front of that white boy, you're nice, but my preference is... So as long as you don't say that, I think you'll be okay.
Any other questions?
I guess only the old guys get to talk. So I have a question about the title, where you go how to date, mate, and I would put procreate, but you put relate.
Yes.
So the
That's
issue,
another book.
Yeah.
but I'm like I said, I have a daughter the same age as his daughter, and I thought a long time ago that I didn't expect her to marry anybody who looked like me. This is a foregone conclusion.
Why?
Well, she's only gone to private schools. She's not been around. She grew up very differently to me. So her exposure, as you're talking about, is very different.
Okay.
So I accepted that, the likelihood that she would be friends with people who don't look like me and have all kind of, this is normal. But for me, the issue about the children becomes a more complicated issue. Because kids don't get to pick their parents. And whatever you think is cool, they get stuck with it. And I will tell you, as a parent, if you have kids, you're raising your own critics, so just get ready.
Yeah. I have 4 children. One came with the package. I actually got pregnant while I was in college, and but she's a great kid. But we came as a package, and when I got married, we had a talk. We had an understanding. He knew that he was going to be raising a black child, and he understood what potential challenges may come with that. And then when we started having our children, we have 3 other children that came along subsequently after. And one thing that was really important to me and to him was that we built a circle of support. We wanted to make sure that not necessarily shield them from everything, but we were particular about where we chose to live. Like, we weren't going to live in an all, we wanted to try to live in an area that was more mixed than anything. We live in a pretty white area, but we have, on my same street, there is an older couple. The woman is black, the man is white, and they're in their 50s and 60s, and they've got grandchildren. So they see that right on their street in an interracial relationship. But it's not even just that. It's also just wanting to surround. It's not necessarily that, and I think that we live in a time where there are more and more children that look like my kids. The fastest growing demographic are people who are claiming mixed race. So it's not like when I grew up, I was born in 73, and it was like to see a mixed child. I remember going to private school, and I feel so bad for this girl because now it all came together. But she was light, she had long hair, and they were like, "You're white." She's like, "No, I'm not, I'm black." "No, you're white." And it was all just us, like 3 little girls, tormenting this girl because we thought she was white. She didn't look like us, and I didn't really understand until I had biracial kids of my own about how hard it must have been for her to try to, fit into all of that. And so I do thank God that we live in an era that those issues are getting less and less. And we live in, Southern California. We live in a community that's very supportive. That was important to us. When we moved to Temecula, we scoped out the place. We drove by morning, noon, and night when kids got out of school. We wanted our kids to see what the other, we had our kids there. We wanted to see how the other kids would treat our kids when we were looking at this house. We did all of those things ahead of time. But there's also people that we've also had to separate ourselves from because the priority is our family and the psychological and emotional health of our kids. And so I've had to say, you know what? Maybe crazy Uncle Larry should not come over. We'll just see him at the family reunion and we'll wave from across the lawn. Or, just whatever. Or maybe your uncle who used to be the Nazi should probably not. He's dead now. But yeah, my husband has an uncle who used to be a Nazi. And the thing was, everybody was a Nazi. If you guys know anything about German history, it's just what they did. They were young. If you were young of a certain age, then you're a Nazi. Especially toward the end when they needed anybody and everybody. They had babies carrying guns. So it was. That's a thing I have to tell my kids. Your uncle, Hans was a Nazi. Your great Uncle George was a freed slave. So it's a complicated navigation of history. But for the most part, you don't deal with that stuff every day. Every day, I'm taking the kids to soccer. I'm taking them to tutoring. I'm picking up. I'm cooking dinner. I'm helping with homework. It's just a normal thing. Even with a black family, you deal with issues like what are the kids. I was incessantly teased as a kid. My parents couldn't help me with that. They couldn't shield me from the fact that I was teased all the time. That had nothing to do. I think these kids will always find something to make another kid feel bad about something. So I think that we shouldn't be so overly sensitive to the color issue because if it weren't that, it would be something else. There's always something that, kids end up quibbling over. So I would just say that for me and raising our kids, we have a very, strict understanding that we wouldn't live in Alabama. Even if they were like, you know what, we'll pay you $1 million if you live in Alabama, you can work here at, this insurance company, we'll pay you $1 million a year, just move to Alabama. We wouldn't do it because we don't think that would be a healthy place to raise our kids. These are decisions that you have to make when you're in a mixed race relationship. Did I answer your question? I hope.
Kind of sort
It's
of.
complicated.
Yeah, it is.
It's really, but the thing is that you have to build a circle of support. You have to make sure that the people who surround you and your children are going to be healthy and reaffirming and affirming of the relationship. That's really what it boils down to. And there's going to be people sometimes that you may have to say, hey, you feel, you're not supporting this, and you can't say those things in front of my kids. I'll give you a hard example. My parents are from the South. They are very colorist there. They're, the lighter you are, the more special you are. My oldest daughter is caramel skin. And I don't want, there's a certain section of my family who would say, to my middle daughter, oh, you're light skinned, you've got that good hair. Too bad, your older sister doesn't look like that. I mean, they would say that and feel that was perfectly fine to say. When I was born, I had a cousin who told my mother, and this is like out of the hospital, told my mother, she's not cute because she's dark. So these are the people that no matter who I married would be not around my kids. Even if I were married to a black man, they wouldn't be around my kids because of the issues that they have with race that they need to work out, but it's not my problem. And it's not going to be my kid's problem. And it's your responsibility as a parent to protect your children as best you can.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Tyler Burnett, and I'm reporting a story for the Loyal Link. And when you brought up about the South, will you say Mississippi? Alabama,
But
sorry.
same difference.
I watched a documentary a few years ago about a high school. It was either in Mississippi or Alabama. I can't remember which one. But they had their first integrated prom.
I think it was Mississippi.
It was Mississippi, and I believe the year was 2008. So that was the first time that, they didn't have the black prom and the white prom. And I was wondering, do you plan on shopping your book towards in those areas and in Middle America to kind of maybe influence and change the way that they look at race?
It's interesting that you brought up Mississippi. NPR recently had a story just a couple of days ago about Ole Miss, about the university there, and about and the dialogues that they are having at that college now about what is the Old South, what does it mean to be the New South. They interviewed members of a fraternity, which is an all-white fraternity, and what that meant to them now in this day and age, what Ole Miss means to them. And I think that we would definitely go to Alabama or Mississippi if we were invited to come. Our aim is to enlighten and to educate, but we will not go anywhere where we feel like we are in harm's way. It is important to us to start this dialogue and to have this dialogue with people who are open to having it. But, so if Ole Miss called us up and said, we're dealing with these issues, we want to talk to you guys, we'll get on a plane. We'll get on a plane. She went to Atlanta.
Yeah. I was invited.
She was invited to go to Atlanta. So the thing is that we are very committed to going where people are embracing and wanting to have this dialogue. But it is all about conversation. It's not about, we do not want to be antagonized. We do not want to, I've been invited to, on radio shows where the aim was to have an argument. And I knew that the argument was coming. I'm not looking to argue with people. That's not my aim. That's not Christelyn's aim.
We're not trying to convince anyone.
We're not trying to convince anyone. We want people to embrace what we have to offer, take it back to their homes, their communities, and start having conversations with other people. Because that, by and large, is the way that we change this conversation, that we look at our president for who he is, as a complete person who is both Kenyan and Caucasian American, who was raised by his white grandparents and his white mother. To hear how divisive people feel that he is because his skin is dark. I mean, I listen to NPR all the time, so this is my next reference. But to hear in Florida that there's a man who believes that President Obama does not stand for his views or can relate to his views because he is a black man is erroneous to me, because he is probably more capable of understanding whites because he grew up with them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that it's all a part of knowing who we are. I grew up, all of my friends, all of my girlfriends from childhood are biracial. All of them. I have Caucasian and Asian, or Caucasian and black, black and Native American, black and white. And I come from a family where interracial and intercultural relationships are not a big deal. So it's very important. And so it was never, like, as Christelyn and I were talking, she was sharing with me this concept, is marriage for white people. I was like, I'd never heard that before. So it's about having conversation. It's about talking to one another without beating each other over the head. And so if Alabama and Mississippi want us, we'll be there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bodyguards and
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Terrell Ruiz. I'm a senior major, African American Studies minor. I'm a senior here at LMU. My question is, how do you believe interracial relationships affect politics? Because I would argue, since we just talked about politics a little bit, I would argue that the political arena doesn't really accept interracial relationships, just because if you're running for a major political position and you're in an interracial relationship, I would argue that there's a good chance you will not win that specific position or earn that specific position because of the fact that you are in an interracial relationship. Like Barack Obama, who's the president of the United States right now, I don't think he would be the president if his wife was not black. So what are your views about that?
was it Strom Thurmond or not? Who's the guy there's a what's his name? Is it his wife?
Oh, Clarence Thomas? Oh, I was like, No, Clarence Thomas's wife is white. I think that,
He's appointed.
but you
He
made
didn't get elected.
Huh? Yeah, he was appointed, and I was about to say, but he
had to be appointed by somebody.
President.
But I think I understand his question, and I did hear a lot of conversation in 2008 by African Americans. Oh, thank God Barack Obama is married to a black woman who looks like a black woman. My problem is that would it have been so bad if she wasn't a darker skinned black woman? Would it have been so bad if she was a white woman? Would it have been so bad if she was an Asian woman? I think the problem comes in with perception. Perception is something that you can't do anything else about, but I don't think it should ever hold you back from pursuing whomever you choose to be with. At some point in time, we all are going to have to deal with this. We're all going to have to deal with this. We're dealing with it now. And in the political arena, it is definitely going to have to be dealt with, as it is in entertainment, as it is in sports, and all of those kinds of things. I would be hard-pressed to believe that you would want to be in any firm or any position, governor or whatever it is, where somebody didn't believe in who you were, and your partner is a representation of who you are, or who you choose to be with. The fact that we have an African American, biracial, however you want to call him, president, is comfort. Yeah, he identifies himself as African American. Is encouraging to me only in the fact that we can now have these discussions and start looking beyond. And so hopefully for you and in your generation, and even me and mine, I'm not that far removed from this, or from yours, although I'm old as Methuselah now, is that we can start looking at it, at people as people, not people as colors. And we're going to have to continue to have these discussions. And we're going to have these discussions outside of ourselves and outside of like-minded groups. We're going to have to start having these conversations with our white counterparts, with our Asian counterparts, with our Hispanic counterparts, because we're all in this soup together. We're all in this soup together. So you could argue with me that the majority of politicians are married to same race people. It doesn't always have to be. There didn't used to be black people in government. Now look at us. So
yeah, there was once a time that it was just unfathomable to even think that there could be a half black president in office. That just in my lifetime, it was just, don't even think about it. You would say, oh yeah, Leroy, you might be president one day. And we all knew, no you're not, Leroy. You're not going to be president. You can't say that anymore. You can't say that anymore. There's got to be a first time for everything. Also, Mia Love. You may not like her politics, but I think she's running for Congress.
is she in Utah?
She's in Utah, of all places. Extremely conservative, Mormon, very Republican. Her husband is white. And she's the darling of the campaign season this year. Everybody loves, every Republican in Utah loves Mia Love. And so I would say there's two examples for you right there that you can't say you can't. There's two right there. It's going to take time. With anything, there's going to be pushback. There's going to be a backlash. But you can't say, one thing that this era has taught me is that you can never say never. You can never say that can't be. Barack Obama becoming president, I can never again say, we'll never have a black president.
We have 10 minutes, and we'd love to.
Hi, my name is Nina. Earlier you were talking about media, specifically television, and how that has, unfortunately, it could be fortunately too, a really strong effect on how people develop their ideas, whether that's consciously or unconsciously, are developing those ideas about other people. Do you think that there will ever be a time where it will be common to look at television and see interracial relationships in a positive light, and what would that take for that to become a reality?
That's a great question. I think that it is possible. One of the things that is very encouraging to me is the numbers of women and the numbers of people of color who are telling their own stories on YouTube and on web, what do you call that thing? The interweb. The key here is in your generation, it may still not be on broadcast cable because it's a money's game, and that they're looking for the broadest audience possible. They don't want to, they don't want to make people in Peoria mad. One of the so, it's in Illinois. But one of the things that's interesting is, and I was having a discussion with my publicist about it, was that Will and Grace opened us up to a whole new thought process and a whole new dialogue about gay couplings, about gay people. And it made it a lot more, and there was, an Emmy magazine had a cover story about how gays were now the in thing. And so I think the thing is that social change in our behind the scenes will push this, because people want to see themselves on television. I remember growing up and looking at programs like Roots and Miss Jane Pittman and Sanford and Son and all those kinds of things. And that was appointment television for us, because even though these were not people who were me or had my same life experience, they were people that I identified with based on color. And that was important to me. because it validated me to have Diane Carroll and Cicely Tyson on television, because Cicely Tyson looked like me. At least I thought she looked, she had big lips and little eyes. That's what I looked like. And so I think that as we continue and move forward, and the people that are producing shows, we have Shonda Rhimes, and I'm still, I'm not a complete and total fan of her work as it relates. Yeah, I know, I saw that. But I think the more we have in position, not only producers, but people who greenlight this kind of material, we will see a shift. But I'm not looking to broadcast television. Cable is doing a lot of interesting things. The web is doing a lot of Hulu, Netflix. I think we are going to, as a consumer culture, have to seek out these kinds of images. And when that starts making money, it'll be on broadcast.
Hi. Hello everyone. I'm Lauren, psychology and African American Studies double major here, senior. I just have a quick question. So when you were talking, and I'm really happy you're here, first of all, but you were talking about your book and how you really promote interracial dating and marriage, which is fine with me. But I kind of got the feeling that you were kind of excluding our black men, and in the beginning you said something like, this man, he had good credit and he opened the door for me. And in my head I'm like, my brother has good credit. Like,
my brother, you know what? This is my black brother.
Yeah, I know it. I know. And so I'm just wondering, like, in your book, do you address that at all? Like, it's okay for black women, you said that we don't want to be looked at as just what we see on the media, and I also don't want our black men to be perceived as what, maybe is seen to the media. We have great black men here who are really trying to, do something. So I'm just wondering, in your book, do you address that at all? Like, it's okay to swirl, it's okay to get out there and date other people, but there's also people in our community that, can be great for you as well.
I think the thing that we do address in the book, and that I want to make very clear here, my father is black, my brother is black. I love my black men. My ex-husband was black. I am not out here promoting, do not look at brothers anymore. What I am saying is that you have a choice. If you cannot find a brown-skinned man, that you have other choices out there beyond that. And the thing that is the most important, if you get nothing out of whatever I have said today, is that the choices that you have in your schooling, in your work, you have those same kind of choices in your relationships. Exercise that. If you can't work for the black law firm and the white law firm wants you, go for that. If the black man ain't looking at you and the white man is, go for that. The thing that is really important to me is that we exercise our choices. I love my black men. Black men Michael has bought 10 books. I am more than loving my black men. But what I am saying to you is that you can still love your black man and love your white or Latino man as well. It doesn't take anything away from y'all. We're saying that y'all have choices, y'all exercise those choices, y'all ought to too.
I will say this too. It's like, here's the thing. What we're saying is, bottom line is to choose character above color. See, that is what it boils down to. And you choose a man, you choose a friend, you choose a boss that has a good character, you're going to be okay. That's how you should live your life. Secondly, I would say, do not limit who can love you. That's really important. And third thing I would say is, you are so cute. I love what you have to say. Don't let them, don't feel like you got to speak for them. Because they're right here, they can speak for themselves.
I was speaking for the black men in general.
They're all like, yep.
I'm sure they agree with me,
but I bring that up, I'll let you finish. I bring that up because for black women, there's a lot of onus on us to build up the brothers, to protect the brothers. And that's good. There was a time that was absolutely necessary to do that, and a lot of us just are socialized to do that. Believe me, we do not, we're not bashing on the black men. If you look through Swirling, that is not what we do. We're just saying, as black men, don't limit themselves. Just like Chris Rock said, black men are like, they think of interracial relationships like, what's on the menu? You know what I mean? It's like, what's the special for today? And so they look at it, that's how black men look at it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not faulting anybody for that. But also at the same time, you know what? Your happiness and what you want as a woman are also important and valid. Don't limit who can love you. That's bottom line.
There were some questions on this side of the room. Okay.
Hi, my name is Shalyn. I was wondering how you would introduce or prep someone of a different race to go to a city that's not as culturally diverse as LA is, somewhere like the South. What kind of things would you say to them that's not as apparent to us?
Okay, that's a good question, because we went to Georgia, me and my husband, for a wedding after we had gotten married. And when we checked in the hotel, there was predominantly black staff. There was a white guy. But when we went to check in, it was like, are you guys together? So it was sort of strange. I think what we had to do was we scoped out together. Okay, where's the hip place to be? We were New Buckhead. You know what I mean? Outside of Atlanta, there were people who still driving around in trucks with Confederate flags. Outside of Atlanta, we weren't going to go there. But there's lots of fun stuff to do in the city, and so that's what we did. And I think that there's nothing wrong with prepping, especially if you're from that area. If you're from the South and I think that. Are you talking about going to meet your family and they're okay? First things first. You have to have discussion. We talk about this in the book specifically, that you guys have a powwow together and say, Aunt May, don't talk about that raisin on her nose. Just pretend you don't see it. My brother really likes football, but do not mention the Packers. He hates them. You know what I mean? So have those, and then give him opportunities to bond. So you say, my mother really likes daisies. And so he brings her some daisies. Or, this is my dad's favorite team. Talk to him about that. So give him some stuff to work with. You know what I mean? Give him some things that will put people at ease. And then at the same time, it goes both ways. So you prep your family and say, he really likes to play Yahtzee. Can we play Yahtzee after dinner? So it just gives a way to sort of create a bond and to have everybody feel comfortable. But there might be a time where the fit hits the sham. If the fit hits the sham, then you need to have some kind of signal, when things are getting too hot. Rub your nose, your ear, something, so that if they're not feeling comfortable, if you guys aren't feeling comfortable, that you guys are communicating. And then afterwards, talk about, have a debriefing. Talk about how it went, how it could have been better. What do you think? I think your mom is warming up to me. She knows I'm not in the Klan now. You know what I mean? I have jokes. I hope you guys aren't taking me seriously. I talk in stereotypes sometimes, just because it makes things really simple and clear.
We have time. We can take these last two questions. Here.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I thought there was somebody else. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So we'll take these last two questions and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. I wanted to thank you guys because when I went to LMU, I'm an alum. I had this in my mind that I only wanted to date black men, and that's fine. And I ended up with a black man, and I'm very happy. However, I'm here to buy the book for my daughter because I want her to know that she has other options when the time is right for her. But my question for you is, and this is something that always ran through my mind that I couldn't deal with, would be what if your husband's race, someone from your husband's race at work gave you a hard time and made you feel bad, and now you got to come home to him? That's my challenge. How would you handle that?
Basically, somebody from
your job
said something hurtful to you,
racial,
okay,
and then you have to come back home to him. Talk to him about it.
You would? Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I think the important thing here is the same kind of dialogue, the things that hurt you, the things that make you proud, the things that you would have that with your spouse of any other race. Why wouldn't you have that? He may have, he could be even better able to, help you deal with it. I don't know if you've ever dealt
Yeah.
with that kind of thing.
Because they might not understand. They might not get it, because sometimes it might be indirect. That's where, you know what I mean?
Okay, so let me see
address
if I understand. We do address this, but I found out my husband is he's an insurance agent, so he sees a lot of people. He has his pictures of his family, and he says, you know what? It helps me out with the sisters. They see me, they're no longer. They're like, hey, you know, I'm gonna buy